Ladies and gentlemen, almost 6 years ago, in a desolate dungeon in Karachi, Pakistan, there was a young man who looked straight in the eyes of his captors and proclaimed his identity. My father is Jewish, my mother is Jewish, I am Jewish, he said before he was silenced forever. And that young man was my son, Danny, a walking sunshine of truth, humor, music, and humanity. An emissary of friendship and goodwill. A bridge builder who gave voice to millions of voiceless people in the Balkan, Southeast Asia, and the Middle East. A storyteller who unveiled to readers in the West the human face behind the news. And he told us stories about ethnic Albanian and Serbian trying to restore friendship, about carpet weavers in Tehran, about singers in Bahrain, pearl divers in Bahrain, and about angry men on the slopes of Mount Kilimanjaro digging gems. And as he stood there, demanding sanity in the face of madness, his words assumed a universal dimension and came to represent and symbolize the right of every individual to assert his heritage, faith, and dignity, and the amazing capacity of the human spirit to weave together the dignity of being different with the sanctity of being one. His murderers schemed to sow fear and humiliation and division among us, but strangely, with all their technical sophistication, they made a critical miscalculation and the outcome turned against them. How? The respect that Danny earned on both sides of the East-West divide, the principles by which he lived his life, the goodness of his smile, and the sound of his last words became iconic personal reminders to millions of people around the world that the current tide of violence and hatred is not an expression of an ordinary conflict between tribes, countries, religion, but threatens to erode the very fabric of civilized society. So consequently, what emerged from Danny's tragedy and vividly displayed on the screens of world consciousness was an urgent call for people of all faith to recognize the dangers threatening civilized society and to lift our common humanity above the differences that sets us apart. So it was this urgent call that compelled my family and I to establish a Daniel Pearl Foundation, to take upon ourselves the task of harnessing all the energy and goodwill that this tragedy had evoked to one and only one aim: fighting the hatred that took Danny's life. Of course, we do not have armies and we do not have resources to conquer territories, and even if we had, I don't know what we would do with them, but we have the goodwill of millions of principled people around the world, Christians, Muslims, and Jews, Pakistanis, Israelis, and Palestinians, journalists and musicians, who are determined to take a stand for tolerance and humanity. And the Daniel Pearl Dialogue Program for Muslim-Jewish understanding that we have the privilege of presenting here, bringing you today, was initiated by Professor Akbar and myself out of a joint concern for the deteriorating relationship between the two communities and out of our unshaking belief that these relationships could be improved by engaging in a frank and respectful and rational dialogue based on our common Abrahamic tradition. We see our mission in this dialogue as that of carving a path of legitimacy for ongoing conversations aiming at the very best at achieving understanding and collaboration, and at the very least, acknowledgement of and familiarity with each other's narrative. Neither of us is an official representative of his community. I am not an ordained rabbi, and my friend Akbar, if nothing has changed, is not an appointed imam. Still, we are very much in tune with the sentiment of our respective communities, and as such, we feel qualified to communicate those sentiments, including grievances and sensitivities, cold and hot issues, with faithfulness and frankness. We speak here before you today as two grandfathers, concerned as grandfathers should be with the future of the grandchildren generation. A friend told me that an interesting observation that out of all the animals in the all the species in the animal kingdom, human being is the only one who maintains family relationship beyond one generation. And this is, I believe, because we are historical animals. Namely, we have historical responsibility. Even in the first commandment, you can see that when it says, Noseh avon avot al banim ve'al shilishim, in Hebrew, in English, it sounds like, I carry the mistakes of fathers through their children and their children's children, which means we do care about the progression of history. And some philosophers even claim that this is Abraham's major contribution to humanity, to linearize history and see history as progressing along a linear line as opposed to the circles that Babylonian tradition has dictated. What you see today happened already before and you are just going in circles. No! Abraham's contribution was we are making progress, and our responsibility is to make sure that the voyage continues upstream. It is with this sense of historical responsibility that we stand here before you today, and following the spirit of Danny, we came here to understand, not to judge, to listen, not to preach, to communicate, not to win an argument. I would like to thank our hosts, sponsors, and various organizations that lend their name and support to this gathering. And I would like also to a special thank to our moderator, Bill, who agreed to moderate the discussion, and to you, the audience, for offering to be part of this conversation. Your very presence here tonight, Jews, Muslims, and Christians, is an act of defiance against the forces of division and exclusion that took Danny's life. And I view it as a triumph of the spirit of dialogue and bridge building that Danny came to symbolize. It is your victory, Danny, the victory of the boldness with which you loved humanity. It is the victory of humanity itself over those who try to tamper with its spirit. It is the victory of every human freedom, forever struggling for the noble, forever daring the impossible. Thank you.